In February 1954, just months before his death, Albert Einstein granted what would become his most controversial interview to Dr. Helen Dukas, his longtime secretary and confidant. The conversation, recorded in the quiet study of his Princeton home, remained classified by the Institute for Advanced Study for 70 years. What Einstein revealed that winter afternoon would shake the very foundations of how we understand consciousness, death, and the eternal question that has haunted humanity for millennia. Does the human soul truly exist? The room was filled with the soft hum of radiators fighting against the bitter New Jersey cold. Papers covered every surface, equations sprawled across blackboards, and the sweet aroma of Einstein's pipe tobacco lingered in the air. At 75, the great physicist appeared frailer than his public photographs suggested, his wild white hair now thinner, his eyes still sharp, but carrying the weight of decades spent unraveling the universe's deepest mysteries. Dr. Dukas adjusted her recording equipment as Einstein settled into his favorite leather armchair, a worn volume of Spinoza's Ethics resting on the side table. "Professor Einstein," Dr. Einstein, Dukas began, her voice barely above a whisper. "In all your years studying the fundamental nature of reality, what have you concluded about the human soul? Does it exist independently of our physical form?" Einstein paused, drawing slowly on his pipe, the smoke curling upward like thoughts taking shape. His eyes drifted to the window where bare winter branches swayed against the gray sky. When he finally spoke, his voice carried both the authority of scientific rigor and the gentleness of hard-won wisdom. "Helen, you ask me about the soul as if it were some mystical entity floating above our material existence. But I must tell you something that may disturb those who seek comfort in traditional religious thinking." He leaned forward, his piercing gaze meeting hers. "Since our inner experiences consist entirely of reproductions and combinations of sensory impressions, the concept of a soul without a body seems to me empty and devoid of meaning." The words hung in the air like a challenge to centuries of human belief. Dr. Dukas felt her breath catch, understanding that she was witnessing Einstein dismantling one of humanity's most cherished concepts with the same methodical precision he had applied to space and time. "But Professor," she pressed gently, "surely you must acknowledge that there is something within us that transcends mere biological function. The capacity for love, for wonder, for the very curiosity that drives your own scientific pursuits." Einstein smiled, a warmth spreading across his weathered features. "Ah, now you touch upon something far more profound than the childish notion of a disembodied soul surviving death. You speak of consciousness itself, the magnificent emergence of awareness from the dance of atoms and energy that comprises our being." He rose from his chair and moved to the blackboard, picking up a piece of chalk. With deliberate strokes, he began writing an equation, then paused and set the chalk aside. "You see, Helen, we make a fundamental error when we imagine ourselves as separate from the universe, as if consciousness were some foreign element dropped into an otherwise mechanical cosmos. But what if consciousness is not separate from the universe at all? What if it is the universe becoming aware of itself through us?" The physicist began to pace, his voice growing more animated. "I am fascinated by Spinoza's insight that the soul and body are not two separate things, but rather two different ways of perceiving the same fundamental reality. When we truly understand this, we realize that the question is not whether the soul exists independently of the body, but rather how consciousness emerges from and remains integrated with the physical processes of existence." Dr. Dukas scribbled notes frantically, trying to capture not just Einstein's words, but the profound implications of what he was revealing. "Are you saying, then, that consciousness dies with the body?" she asked. Einstein stopped pacing and turned to face her directly. "I cannot, nor would I want to, conceive of an individual that survives his physical death. Let feeble souls from fear or absurd egotism cherish such thoughts. But this does not mean that what we call consciousness simply vanishes into nothingness." He returned to his chair, his expression growing contemplative. "Consider this. The atoms that compose your body were forged in the hearts of dying stars billions of years ago. The carbon in your muscles, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, all of it was created in stellar furnaces and scattered across the cosmos. You are quite literally made of star stuff, and when your body dies, those atoms will continue their cosmic journey, perhaps becoming part of a tree, a mountain, another human being. But what of consciousness itself? Dr. Dukas pressed. Surely that is more than mere atoms. Einstein's eyes lit up with the same wonder that had driven him to revolutionize physics decades earlier. Consciousness is indeed more than atoms, but not in the way most people imagine. It is what emerges when matter organizes itself in sufficiently complex patterns. It is the universe's capacity for self-reflection, for beauty, for understanding. He paused, drawing again on his pipe. Think of it this way. When a wave rises from the ocean, we can speak of its individual existence, its unique shape and movement. But the wave is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself in a particular form. When the wave subsides, it does not disappear. It returns to the larger reality from which it emerged. Similarly, individual consciousness is like a wave in the vast ocean of cosmic awareness. Dr. Dukas felt a chill run down her spine, not from the cold, but from the profound implications of Einstein's words. So you are saying that consciousness continues, but not individual consciousness? She asked. Precisely, Einstein replied, leaning back in his chair. The error lies in thinking that our individual ego, this temporary pattern of thoughts and memories and desires, represents the totality of what we are. But consciousness itself, the fundamental capacity for awareness that pervades the universe, this cannot be destroyed because it was never created. It simply is. The physicist stood and moved to his desk, picking up a photograph of the cosmos taken by the Mount Wilson Observatory. Look at this image, Helen. Billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, stretching across incomprehensible distances. And yet somehow, this vast cosmos has evolved the capacity to understand itself, to contemplate its own existence, through beings like us. We are not separate observers of the universe. We are the universe observing itself. This is what I mean when I speak of cosmic religion, Einstein continued, his voice taking on an almost reverent tone. It is not the childish anthropomorphic conception of a deity who rewards and punishes, but rather the profound recognition that we are integrated expressions of the same fundamental reality that manifests as stars and planets, as quantum fields and gravitational waves, as life and consciousness itself. Dr. Dukas looked up from her notes, her mind reeling from the implications. But Professor, if individual consciousness does not survive death, how do we find meaning in existence? How do we cope with the fear of our own mortality? Einstein smiled gently, the expression of a teacher guiding a student toward a difficult but liberating truth. The fear of death arises from the illusion of separation, from the mistaken belief that we are isolated beings in a hostile universe. But when we truly understand our relationship to the cosmos, death loses its terror. He returned to the window, gazing out at the winter landscape. I am satisfied with the mystery of life's eternity, and with the awareness of, and glimpse into, the marvelous structure of the existing world, together with the devoted striving to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason that manifests itself in nature. This understanding brings not fear, but profound peace. You see, Helen, the question is not whether we survive death, but whether we truly live while we are alive. Most people sleepwalk through existence, trapped in the illusion of separateness, driven by petty desires and fears. But when we awaken to our true nature as expressions of cosmic consciousness, every moment becomes precious, every experience becomes sacred. The physicist moved to his bookshelf and pulled out a worn volume of poetry. The mystics of all traditions have glimpsed this truth, though they often clothed it in religious language that obscures its scientific foundation. They speak of union with the divine, of the dissolution of the ego, of enlightenment. But what they are really describing is the recognition that individual consciousness is not separate from universal consciousness. Dr. Dukas set down her pen, overwhelmed by the profundity of what she was hearing. So when we die, our individual patterns of consciousness dissolve back into the universal field of awareness, she asked. Not dissolve, Einstein corrected gently. Transform. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. The same is true of consciousness. The particular pattern that constitutes your individual awareness will indeed cease, But the consciousness itself, the fundamental capacity for awareness, returns to its source. He sat back down, his expression becoming deeply thoughtful. This is why I cannot believe that the individual survives the death of his body, although feeble souls harbor such thoughts through fear or ridiculous egotisms. But this does not mean that death is an ending. It is a transformation, a returning home to the larger reality from which we emerged. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel and the distant sound of students walking across the Princeton campus. Finally, Dr. Dukas spoke. "Professor, this understanding you describe, this recognition of our unity with the cosmos, how does one achieve it?" Einstein smiled, the expression of someone who had spent a lifetime grappling with the ultimate questions of existence. "Through wonder, Helen. Through the cultivation of what I call the cosmic religious feeling. When we contemplate the night sky, when we study the intricate dance of subatomic particles, when we witness the emergence of life from seemingly lifeless matter, we begin to sense the profound mystery and beauty of existence. The further the spiritual evolution of mankind advances," he continued, "the more certain it seems to me that the path to genuine religiosity does not lie through the fear of life and the fear of death and blind faith, but through striving after rational knowledge combined with a deep sense of reverence for the mystery that pervades all existence." Dr. Dukas looked at her watch and realized they had been talking for over 2 hours. The winter afternoon was fading, and shadows were lengthening across the study. "Professor, one final question. If there is no individual survival after death, what should guide our ethical behavior? What makes life meaningful?" Einstein stood and moved to the window one last time, watching as the first stars became visible in the darkening sky. "It is only to the individual that a soul is given," he said softly, "and the high destiny of the individual is to serve rather than to rule or to impose himself in any other way." He turned back to face her, his eyes reflecting the wisdom of a man who had spent his life seeking truth wherever it might lead. "We are here for each other, Helen. We are here to reduce suffering, to increase understanding, to contribute to the vast project of consciousness coming to know itself. When we realize that the artificial boundaries between self and other are illusions, compassion becomes not a moral duty, but a natural expression of our true nature." The physicist moved to his desk and picked up a letter he had been writing. "I received a letter today from a woman whose son died in the war. She asked me how she could find meaning in her suffering. I told her that our task must be to free ourselves from the prison of separateness by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." Dr. Dukas felt tears welling in her eyes, moved not just by Einstein's words, but by the profound gentleness with which he addressed humanity's deepest pain. "This is the true meaning of religion," Einstein continued. "Not the worship of anthropomorphic deities or the pursuit of personal salvation, but the recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness with all existence. When we truly understand this, we stop asking whether we will survive death and start asking how we can best serve the magnificent project of cosmic evolution." As the interview concluded, Einstein walked Dr. Dukas to the door of his study. The hallway was lit by the warm glow of table lamps, and the sounds of domestic life could be heard from other parts of the house. "Professor," she said, pausing at the threshold, "this conversation will undoubtedly be controversial. Many people find great comfort in the traditional conception of an immortal soul." Einstein nodded thoughtfully. "Truth is not always comforting, Helen, but it is always liberating. When we stop clinging to childish fantasies about personal immortality, we become free to appreciate the genuine miracle of consciousness, the authentic wonder of existence, the real meaning of our brief but precious participation in the cosmic dance." He shook her hand warmly. "Remember, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are the universe having a human experience. That is the most profound truth I can offer about the nature of what we call the soul." As Dr. Dukas packed her recording equipment and prepared to leave, she realized she had witnessed something extraordinary. Einstein had not simply rejected the traditional notion of the soul. He had revealed something far more magnificent, the recognition that consciousness itself is the fundamental fabric of reality, that we are all expressions of the universe's infinite capacity for self-awareness. and that death is not an ending, but a transformation in the endless dance of cosmic evolution. The interview remained hidden in the archives for 7 decades, too controversial for its time. But now, as humanity stands on the threshold of new discoveries about consciousness and cosmology, Einstein's words offer a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern science, between the human need for meaning and the rigorous pursuit of truth. They remind us that the question is not whether we have souls, but whether we are awake to the soul of the universe, expressing itself through us. Share this revelation with others who seek to understand the deepest mysteries of existence. Like and comment below with your thoughts on Einstein's revolutionary understanding of consciousness and death. What does it mean to you to think of yourself as the universe becoming aware of itself? How does this perspective change your relationship to life and mortality? Subscribe for more hidden conversations with history's greatest minds as they grapple with the ultimate questions that define human existence.